we look at most of what we do in ops today, nothing is cohesive. Like there's nothing goes together well, right? And like even like the core work that we do as an ops engineer, it's like, oh, someone wrote some Terraform that we want to share with the rest of the org. How do we do that? We'll make a GitHub repo that starts with the word Terraform, and now they can just search the word Terraform and see every single module. And like, good luck. Like just the search story day one for a developer trying to use that is hard.
It is really hot and humid outside if you are anywhere near where Yvonne and I are.
That's right.
It's summer break, so if you have young children, they're probably home making plenty of noise. And out in the hills of Kentucky, you have a shed. And in that shed sits a person who happens to be my co-host, Yvonne.
It's true. It's true. And for those who don't know me personally, may not realize that we're in the throes of wedding planning for my oldest daughter. So the shed is sort of a place of respite right now. There's no wedding decor out here. There's no, it's quiet. But there is constant bustle in the house. So but by the time this goes live, we will probably have had a wedding. So that has eaten my summer, folks. So happy to be here in the shed talking about something other than flowers and cake and food.
Don't leave tech to become a full-time wedding planner. I know that you really want to do it after this experience, but just stay in tech and stay.
I have reaffirmed my life choices.
So, in this ever-evolving landscape of cloud technologies, presents both immense and complex challenges. And one thing we do here on the Cloud Gambit is explore the strategies and inherent risks, I guess, within this dynamic domain. And in today's discussion, we're thrilled to bring on a leader who I would say exemplifies innovation and really pragmatic problem solving in the field. Cory O'Daniel, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. And I don't mind spending the time talking about cake. I'm all about it.
Oh yeah. So is it as hot for you as it is for us? Where are you located at, by the way?
I'm in Pasadena, California, so right outside Los Angeles in the foothills, as you can tell on camera, of the mountains up here. And looks like it's 87 based off of the thing that's over here was telling me I'm gonna start sweating here in a minute now that my AC's off. Yeah.
So yeah, well, again, thanks for coming on. And I'm sure the weather here, it's probably just a little more humid. We're in this Ohio Valley, the humidity around this time of year. Like you walk outside and you're out there for 5 seconds and you're sweating and you didn't even do anything. You took 3 steps and you're just pouring sweat.
Your glasses fog up. Any beverage that you have is sweating. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is that time.
How far are you off from Loveland, Ohio? You familiar with that?
I don't know where Loveland is. I am 3 hours from Cincinnati. Okay. I took a kid to Columbus earlier this week, which was 5 hours. So yeah, I'm about 3 hours from Cincinnati. Okay. If that gives you any.
I'm from indication. Loveland originally. But,
very cool.
Interesting. Is that south of Columbus or north of Columbus? Do you know?
I'm looking it up.
West.
Yeah, let's look.
I think west.
I made a lot of trips up to Columbus for my kid plays travel hockey, so there was all sorts of stuff.
Oh yeah, it's just outside of Cincinnati. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's really close.
Yeah, then. You're not far from Kings Island.
No, shoot, that was the only thing. It's the only thing to do growing up was Kings Island, and then this really weird castle in Loveland was it. If anybody's
I know
from
that
Loveland,
castle, that big flat castle thing.
It's down by is it Little Miami up there? I can't remember. It's a guy built
Miami
it out
of Ohio.
It's like a guy built it out of it was rocks and Boy Scouts. He's pretty much child labor. He was just build me a castle, and they built a castle over a series of summers, and it's not a huge castle, but it's a bigger castle than I have. I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to disgrace this guy's castle. Castle's a castle.
All right.
So you grew up. Did I read? I don't know if I read this correctly, but you grew up on a tobacco farm. Is that
Yeah,
right?
tobacco and apples. So the city I was born in was Felicity, Ohio. Yeah, so it's a little,
Bless.
I think it's a little further east from Loveland, if I recall. That's been a long time, but yeah, I spent most of my life in Loveland and Florida. But yeah, born on a farm. So that was weird.
Well, I love the connections here because I also grew up on 300 acres. And that experience is what caused me as a teenager to say, I'm not going to do this for a living. I am not going to marry a farmer. I'm going to get a job working with my head. I am not going to do this. So, yes, if anything will drive you to tech, it's tobacco.
But I've reached the age where I'm trying to figure out how to make enough money to go be a farmer now. I'm just like, I'm done thinking. I want to just dig holes all day,
Full
and
circle.
like, look at birds. But
Funny how that works.
it's expensive to go back to that. You have to buy
That's right.
a farm. You have to realize you're not going to make any money, so you have to be rich. Which is just not there yet.
Yeah. That or have generational wealth that you've inherited via land.
There you go.
Those are the two options.
Yep. So I'm just starting with starting with a small veggie bed over here. Like that's my farm now.
Gotcha.
Not bad. And is that where your tech, just kind of technology in general? I think I also read that you were like modding Duke Nukem or something, or you started like game modding and stuff. Like pretty young on. Is that kind of where the interest got started? And
yeah, it's funny. It's like I wouldn't say that's where the interest got started. I actually had zero interest for a very long time. So my original major was physics and architecture. So I was dead set on being an architect. Like my entire arm is tattooed in architecture things, as like an homage to a career not chosen. But I had just been developing software since I was like 12 or so. And so I was working at a hospital, Columbia Hospital, I believe was where this happened at. And I was working data entry while in college. So making like, $5 an hour to just like punch stuff in. And eventually I'm like, where does all this data come from? Like they're printing out like hundreds of pages and I just like punch it into this like old like terminal system. So I asked somebody one day and they're like, oh, we have a spreadsheet that we print and then you take the print and then you type it in. And I'm like, this is silly. And so I got a copy of that spreadsheet that they made every day. And I wrote a little program that would extract from it. And then just kind of like, it's like, you're talking like vampire tap wires, like in the data center, like this is a long time ago. And there was zero security on this terminal program that we put stuff into. So I just wrote a program that you take the spreadsheet and it would just kind of navigate it and fill it all in. And then I didn't have anything to do. And so I got busted one day reading the Dungeon Master's Guide at my desk. My boss came by and she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, not my job, obviously. But they didn't have the rights to my software because I was not a software developer and it was developed at home. So they had to buy my rights, which was very exciting to me. They bought it for $1,000 and then fired like an entire team of people. But they gave me a promotion to the IT team. And so that's kind of where I was like, oh, this is an interesting thing with computers. And so started doing a lot more networking, a lot more data center stuff. And then my dean told me one day that I would be poor as an architect and I would be building 7-Elevens for the rest of my life. And I was like, well, I got to do something else now that I'm like 3 years into all this math and physics. And so I landed myself in the realm of computer science.
That's awesome. It's like DIY hacker spirit of the ages, like manifesting itself into like a real career path.
Yeah.
Well, and it reminds me back in the day, you get stickers and there was that sticker that said, go away or I'll replace you with a very small shell script. Right. It reminds me of that, just somebody looking at the landscape and going, why are we doing all this extra work? There's a better way. And then hacking up a script that just makes things easier and for the longest time.
Yeah.
And maybe still so many of our systems are held together by the WD-40 of those simple scripts that folks have written.
That was my first piece of duct tape, and I'm gonna die writing duct tape apparently. But yeah, that was it. It's funny. It was like 12,000 pages that would be printed a night. That was then just handed to just an entire room full of data entry people. And it's like this all just came from a spreadsheet, and it was just like, yeah. So and then I've just been kind of writing duct tape since. So kind of very early in my career, kind of got pigeonholed into like what would become DevOps, and stayed here ever since.
Do you want to take us through that journey just a little bit? Like kind of,
Yeah.
Where you just left off to, now you're co-founder and CEO of Massdriver. So how did you, really interesting career arc, by the way, but like, how did you get to where you are now?
So I honestly walk backwards and trip on things. That's how I've gotten most places in my life. I was working, so I ended up switching careers. I ended up staying in medical. So I was a HIPAA security analyst for large medical clinic in Florida. And I was just like, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. This is great. Worked in a data center, solved some extremely weird problems. And then one day I was in a bar, and this is 2001, maybe 2002. And I'm there with my laptop, which is a very strange thing to see in a bar today, let alone when people didn't have Wi-Fi. And there was another guy in the same bar with a laptop. And this is a place I went to every single day. So I asked the bartender, I'm like, why is there another nerd in here? And he's like, he's a software developer too. And I was like, oh, this is weird. And so I was like, hey, are you a software developer? And the guy was like, how did you know? And I was like, the bartender told me. And he's like, I didn't tell the bartender that. I look at the bartender, I'm like, how did you know? He's like, who else would bring a laptop to a bar? Like just nerds. And so I asked this guy, I'm like, well, what do you do? I'm in a suit, because that's what you wore to your IT job in Florida. You would sweat all day. And this guy's in board shorts and a t-shirt. And I'm like, what do you do that you get to wear that to work? And I'm wearing this. And he's like, I work for a startup in Los Angeles. And I talked a little bit about it. I didn't know what the word startup meant. I thought startup was the company name. Like, this is how naive I am back then. I'm like, what the hell? I don't know what a startup is. And so I'm like, listen to this guy talk for like 30 minutes about like how cool it is. Like, we got games. We play, Sega Genesis all day or whatever we were playing back then. And I was just like, this sounds like these guys just get to hang out and get paid decent cash and wear board shorts. I was like, I'm moving to California. So I just quit my job the next day and drove out here. Just zero plans. Just like, I'm going to figure it out when I get there. Wow. Found a very early job on a site that we won't talk about what they do, but you have to prove you're 18 to use it. And all my friends were like, you're the luckiest guy in the world. I'm like, it's actually a very hard job to do. It's very distracting. And then my second job was working at just a very early stage startup. And so this company called Ripple, they're one of the first companies, I think, to fully move a data center into AWS. So this was when EC2 first launched. And I was the only person on the team that had development experience and data center experience. And so my boss was just like, you're going to lead our data center migration. And we had this big colo that we were essentially decommissioning. We run out of lease on. And so I just helped them automate and move all this stuff to a bunch of EC2 instances. And so like, that's where I really like started to like, I guess, become like more of a cloud engineer, DevOps engineer. And then I just spent the space working for startups for a while, started a couple of my own deal-based deal science, a company called Vocal, which was very early stage or very early internet video streaming platform. So it was all browser-based. So I got experience like raising money, working in startups, and then I got burned out. And I just went and worked for big tech for a while. So I worked for a bunch of big companies, public companies. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, I was working for Google PSO, and I was going in and helping these large companies move to Google Cloud from different data centers. And I just kept seeing the same problem happen over and over again. We'd get into these companies, they'd have a handful of ops people, whether that handful is 5 people or 100, doesn't matter when there's 30 times more developers than you. Like, these people were just constantly outnumbered. And so they'd move all this stuff to GCP, they'd get a bunch of Terraform, they'd have just thousands of resources, and then they'd go, the developers don't like doing Terraform. And it's like, yeah, duh. Like, everybody knows this. And so I just kept seeing this over and over again at these huge companies where I'd seen the same problem over and over again at small companies. And I'm like, this is wild that a piece of technology that's so important to what we do day in and day out, ops people can't figure out how to get developers to use it and can't figure out how to make it easier for developers. And so that's where I kind of came up with the original idea for Massdriver. Quit my job, threw away all that sweet consulting big company bucks, and went back to 7-Eleven architect bucks. Pretty much. Full circle. Yeah, so that's my story in a nutshell.
Oh, wow. So like one thing I noticed too, like I know I've talked to plenty of founders. Some of them code a little bit, some of them don't. I would say that you're maybe kind of on a different level here. So I took a peek at your GitHub, and you definitely have.
All right, some code.
Yeah, you write some.
There are
code
lots of
now and
commits
then.
there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of commits. I mean, so we're an ops product, so it's like we got to stay like everything we do. This is probably annoy the head of our VCs to hear me say this, but like we approach almost every decision we make from the point of view of that struggling DevOps engineer, and we do that in like how you use our product, to like how we design our product, to even like how we do our pricing. And so one of the things that I've kind of learned is like I need to stay close enough to the code that I can like see how it works and like see that it's giving people an easier time. But also we're a small company, and so like we've gotten to a point where we operate outside of our weight class pretty well. Like people are always surprised. We're only 4 people. 4 people. We got hundreds of customers on the platform. We have a migration arm where we move people between clouds. We move people from data centers to clouds, and people are always like, "How do you guys do it with so few people?" We lean into automation extremely hard. We automate almost everything. And so it's very easy for us to do stuff that'd be like very hard for other teams that haven't done this over and over again. And so, it's just, coding day in, day out and like trying to sell the thing at the same time. It's like, it just kind of works out. But we had this big push. So this might be why you see all the commits like 3 months ago. Our consistent number one ask in our product was self-hosting. And like, we didn't originally build Massdriver as, it was originally like more of a pass when we first built it. And so we just never had the intention of somebody else running it. Like when we first built it, and we leaned super hard into AWS. And so we used like 26 AWS services. So it was literally just impossible to deploy our software without AWS. And so me and my co-founder spent the last 2 months rewriting the entire app to run like in a monolith so that people could deploy it on-prem. And so in pretty much 2 months, we like rebuilt everything, migrated the whole thing with only one outage, which was nice. It was only about 7 minutes. Luckily, our biggest customer deployed in that 7 minutes, which was it's always fun. It's like, oh man, I got like 9.99999% uptime. And of course, like the biggest customer deploys in that down window. And it's just like, you guys wouldn't believe how much effort we've put into moving this thing in the meantime, but they don't care. So ton of code and still, but
can you, I would love to know what was the use case or what was the justification for customers to really want the platform on-prem, because it seems like everything's moving to SaaS, everything's moving to cloud hosted. I mean, and we're even talking now about SaaS being dead, right?
Yeah.
So what was it that was
on-prem moving to cloud? Like they have a product that they've built to work in a data center, and they're getting, companies banging down their door. We want this in cloud consumption.
Yeah.
So usually it's the reverse.
Well, so the funny thing is, so like our on-prem, it's pretty much just like a monolith, so it'll run anywhere, any data center, AWS, GCP, Azure, your physical stuff, wherever. I think the biggest reason people demanded it is like when you're using Massdriver, you've given up on some norms. So we can talk more about the product in a bit if you'd like, but we have just a very different way of seeing the world of infrastructure as code, and it's the world of developer experience and usability. And so these companies that are seeing our product are like, hey, we've tried everything else and this hasn't worked. Like this is the thing that we need. But at the end of the day, Massdriver is managing your infrastructure. And so the biggest 2 reasons for people needing it on-prem was most of our customers today have a on-prem and a cloud footprint. And so they want to manage their VMwares, their different stuff on-prem that they're using Terraform and Ansible to manage. They want the same tool that they're using Terraform or OpenTofu or Bicep for managing cloud. They don't want to have 2 different stacks for on-prem and off-prem. And, our product actually like bridges the gap between infrastructure automation tools. So you can actually like talk between Ansible and Terraform and Helm. So like a lot of your glue code starts to go away when you use Massdriver. And when you have these systems that are like cloud and on-prem, there's a lot of glue code that people are kind of throwing together. And then the second thing is we're what's managing your cloud. So like Massdriver at the end of the day needs enough credentials to provision stuff in the cloud for you. And so, companies with extremely strong security postures are like, wait, so we have to give like approximate root credentials to a SaaS, which is a crazy request. As a SaaS company say, hey, just give us as much access to AWS as you want your developers to have. And so the biggest thing is like having that locked down. It's on-prem. the attack vector is much smaller. You attack Massdriver, you don't get everybody's stuff. Like if they go find this specific instance on-prem someplace, puts a lot of it into their security models. So they don't have to send us these like 300-page, security questionnaires. It's like they know exactly how it's going to operate because they're going to run it in a, air-gapped VPC or whatever.
Gotcha.
Makes sense.
So yeah, I guess I would like to talk a little more just about Massdriver in the market and just kind of the story. So Massdriver, I think I asked if you all were founded in like 2020 or something. It's 2021.
2021.
Right? We got it. We got the date right. So first off, well, I have a few questions here, but I think first off, what a time to be the founder of a startup. And some might consider it amazing in the short term due to like this unprecedented access to capital and just like market enthusiasm, I guess.
Yeah.
But challenging or even bad sometimes in hindsight for many founders because of some like unsustainable hype that sort of followed coming out of the COVID and peak ZERP. So, market corrections, as it turns out, is a real thing. But what was your experience founding Massdriver during this period? And kind of like, what was your vision for Massdriver as far as the problems that it solves, which you've already kind of gone into, but like product market fit and like placing yourself in a category to compete? Are you a big fish in a pond with no other fish? Or are you like a medium-sized fish and there's lots of other fish in that pond? So just curious about your thoughts there.
Yeah, there's a lot of different animals in the pond, is what I would say. There's not a lot of fish. There's a ton of different animals. There's sharks, there's alligators. It's a weird pond. So when we got started, it was funny. We were the last company admitted to our YC batch. And I think this is one of the reasons I get confused about what year we started, because it was a lot of talking in 2020 to YC, but our batch was 2021. So we had just a ton of conversations with them. So in my mind, it starts in 2020, but the batch actually started in 2021. So, we applied for our batch. It was really funny. We had the team that we ended up working with at YC. They actually ended up showing us their notes later on our interview. And it literally the entirety of the notes was just the words "no brainer." And I was like, that's kind of flattering. That feels pretty cool. But we actually had to go through our interview twice. And so the reason why is they have these groups inside of each batch, and there was one spot left. And so we interviewed, we got in. No brainer is like the reason. Like that was the extent of our notes. And but then we get a call back and they're like, hey, we call back people same day if you get in. And like, we didn't hear anything. And we're like, oh, we didn't make it into YC. The next day we get an email and they're like, we're trying to figure out what to do. Can you come back in for another interview? And I'm like, this is strange, because they're like, we make the decision day one. So we go back in and it's weird, because now we're like, what did we say on the last call that's requiring a second interview with different people? So we sit through the second interview and almost immediately get an email that's like, hey, you guys are in. And so we actually start YC, I think 3 days late. Like that's how like late in the batch we were. One of our competitors, I'm going to throw air quotes around that because I don't really think they're a competitor, was in the group that had one spot. So they had to shuffle a bunch of companies around to like not have two competitors in the same group. So we weren't like kind of learning from each other the whole time. But then after that, like our traction took off while we were in YC. And again, when we first started, we were much more of a pass. And so our traction took off pretty hardcore. We made it to just shy of $500,000 of ARR in about 10 weeks, which was pretty phenomenal. We got 170 no's from VCs before we got into YC. The day of our demo, you only get 1 minute to talk. We had 120 something VCs inbound within like 3 minutes of our demo. And I think it was mainly because of this big financials number. And so it was great. Like this is 2021. We're like on top of the world. So we're doing our fundraise, and then like the world kind of collapses in like the beginning of 2022 around like AI kicking in. Like all of a sudden, like all the stuff that worked for us in email just stopped working because everything was hyper personalized. We had this amazing early go-to-market motion where one of my previous companies was a web crawling company. So I would just, it works pretty interesting. Like you can give us some information, it'll go out and get a bunch of stuff. So I'd be like, hey, I want information on this job. It's very funny. It's like, it's similar to some of the stuff ChatGPT does, but what we essentially do is we look at companies and we find companies that were looking for their first DevOps hires. And like, that was our original competition is you're about to go hire your first DevOps person. they're going to hate the job. I don't care what you do. Your first DevOps person is always like, why did I take this job? Because there's just so much for them to do on day one, right? And so we're like, we'll find these companies that are about to hire DevOps. But what we put in our search was we only wanted to find companies that the role had been open for like 3+ months. They're not finding anybody, right? And you see it's job offer, the amount of buzzwords, there's all sorts of reasons why. And so this is how we found our niche audience, was like these companies that could not attract DevOps talent. And where we kind of hooked in the most is healthcare. And so healthcare is probably our biggest vertical today. And they just continue to have this problem of like not being able to find people. So we're in this place where like, wait, this go-to-market motion that was working really well. We're making a crap load of money. AI comes out. Everybody's email is just saturated with garbage now. All these personalized emails and all this effort that we put into these emails just would not even get opened anymore. And then all of a sudden, all of our early customers just start disappearing, leaving the platform. And we're like, oh my God, like this went from like the best year of our life, like we're going to be a public company any day now, to what in the hell is happening? Like nothing's working anymore. And with our customers, what was happening was it was so like past like originally, like you couldn't actually put your own infrastructure as code into Massdriver. It was a diagramming engine that would let you build like compliant infrastructure on the cloud, but it was just meant for teams that had literally zero cloud or ops experience. And our biggest request from customers then was, be really useful if we could put our own Terraform in this thing and diagram it. And we're like, you don't need to do that. Like, well, you let us know what service, like we'll build the Terraform, we'll put it into Massdriver, you just diagram it. And everybody wanted to do their own stuff. And so these people are leaving in droves because they wanted to be able to upload their own stuff. And so we had to pretty much take this thing that was like a GUI pass and turn it into like an infrastructure automation platform. And so like did all this work, and like now we start getting this new like class of audience. These are these ops people that are on these overwhelmed teams that are like, I have IAC, I know how to do IAC, I don't know how to get the rest of these people to use it. And I think that right there is the biggest problem in cloud and infrastructure as code today. There's a really great tweet by Mitchell Hashimoto, creator of Terraform, probably a few weeks back by now. It was, Terraform's still the best. I disagree with that statement. I think OpenTofu is the best. But the rest of his statement is, I'd like to see someone replace it. The major alternatives aren't interesting to me because they're too iterative or copycat. I want to see something that fundamentally takes hold. IAC feels stagnant. And this has been like our argument for like the past 2 or 3 years. IAC is stagnant. And this isn't a feeling. Like he said, it feels stagnant. It is. If you look at the state of CI/CD, IAC adoption has been flat for years. And these are the companies that are like into CI/CD, reporting this stuff. Even companies that say they're using it aren't at 100%. Meantime, we're getting more and more cloud. We're getting more and more like junior engineers without cloud experience coming from PASS, coming from boot camps and stuff. And so we have this need of like, everybody needs to be a cloud expert. Reality is most people aren't. So how do you extend that functionality to a developer? And like, that was the problem that we came in and we're trying to solve. And we did it in a pretty different way. Like the root of Massdriver is it's diagrams, it's infrastructure as diagrams, but it's not like a lucid chart where you just diagram whatever. What you're diagramming is actual infrastructure as code modules. So your ops team uploads, hey, this is how we run Dynamo, this is how we run Postgres, this is how we run Kubernetes, this is how we run S3 for logs versus ETLs or whatever. And now you as a developer, you just see this sidebar of like use cases in your org. You drag them out, you connect them together, and Massdriver takes care of all of the provisioning, all of the workflows, all of the interstep stuff where it's like, hey, you have a Postgres database deployed with Terraform, but your app's a Helm chart. How do you do firewall rules? How do you do environment variables? How do you do IAM policy binding between these two different IAC tools? And so Massdriver kind of became this glue between infrastructure as code modules. And that's kind of where it like really started to hit, is like now orgs can say, hey, I got ops team. They want to scale like their self-service. They're not going to learn TypeScript so that they can do some IDP stuff, right? They're not going to go learn TypeScript to go do, what's that tool that everybody uses? Not, oh my gosh, Backstage, right? These teams are overwhelmed. Like, how do you get them to get that power without them having to learn a new tool set? And it's like, well, our point of view is like, again, ops oriented. Let them build a platform, an internal developer platform using just infrastructure as code. And don't make the developers learn Terraform and check off and Wiz and Sneak and all this other stuff just to be able to get a database, right? So yeah, so that's kind of like the journey through like the past couple of years, and then like I guess the core value prop right there.
Well,
Awesome.
we've talked so much about, or at least I've talked about it a lot, about the importance of building your compliance and your security into your platform. In other words, you can't bolt on your security. It has to be part of how you build.
Mhm.
And what you're describing gives you the mechanism to allow the folks who really understand your security, your compliance policy, your cloud infrastructure, how that needs to work together to build that in, and then to provide that as a pluggable component
Mhm.
for your developers. But all that's bundled in because you've built the component that they're using, right?
Exactly. Right. So it's really
Yeah.
funny. Like we look at most of what we do in ops today, nothing is cohesive. Like there's nothing goes together well, right? And like even like the core work that we do as an ops engineer, it's like, oh, someone wrote some Terraform that we want to share with the rest of the org. How do we do that? We'll make a GitHub repo that starts with the word Terraform, and now they can just search the word Terraform and see every single module. And like, good luck. Like just the search story day one for a developer trying to use that is hard. But let's say I find the module and I want it. What do I do as a developer? Do I just say, "Ooh, I got it. This is great"? No. I go back to my repo. I add a main TF. I reference the other repo. Now I've got some Terraform, except I don't know what to put in the variables. So I'm slacking Doug, and I'm like, what do I put for the instance size, Doug? Doug tells me an RG6, and I ask Chauncey, and Chauncey says an i3 or whatever. Right? I have no idea why they're telling me these things that I don't know what to put in. I'm just punching them in. I'm like, this is great. I'm going to deploy a database, merge my commit. Nothing happens. I didn't copy any of the workflows. Stupid me. I didn't know I had to copy 17 walls of YAML. So now I'm Chauncey, where's the YAML at? He's like, YAML's over here. It's in the README on that repo. You should have seen it. A great copy. Paste it. How does this do with staging versus M versus a preview environment? You figure that out on your own. Okay, great. Thanks. 3 months later, it's super expensive. CFO's pissed off, and it's out of compliance because I didn't add the sneak scanner to my workflow, right? And so it's like everything we do is such a painful amount of like steps. It's like, put it in Notion. Developers will figure it out. It's like, dude, you know what? They're going to get it to work, and then they're done reading your Notion doc. And so the thing that makes Massdriver unique, besides like the diagramming engine, is we bring that cohesion to what you're doing. So we have this technology, as well as shaking my finger when you said bundle, we actually call it a bundle. It takes your infrastructure as code, your policy as code, and then the workflow for like how that all works together for provisioning to any environment, and it compacts it into a single software artifact. So when you're diagramming on the canvas in Massdriver, people are like, oh, is that generating Terraform? It's like, no. That is Terraform written by someone on your team. But more importantly, it's the Terraform. It is all the compliance tooling and all the compliance configs, and it's the workflows. So as they're dragging out this canvas, building this diagram of the cloud, behind the scenes, what Massdriver is doing is we're actually building ephemeral CI/CD pipelines. So essentially, we've brought all that work back to one place for you as an ops engineer. If I'm the person that knows Postgres the best, I probably know the workflows the best. I probably know the compliance scanning the best. And I put all of that in one repo called, Terraform-Postgres or whatever I want to call it, push that to Massdriver, and Massdriver is going to say, hey, I'll deploy that ISC, but it's always with these configs and always with these workflows. Your developers can't get around them. They don't even know it exists.
Well, and you touched on it very briefly, but as I think about large organizations, the ability to do, and it's like pre-cost optimization, right? Are you running the right services with the right instance types, with all the right components that are tuned to your environment, to your contractual obligations with your cloud provider, right? Depending on what your contract looks like with your cloud provider, certain resources are going to have different discount levels on them, right? You can incorporate all of that into your deployment, and then it's just not anything your developers have to think about. And it provides consistency and stability across your entire environment so that there's just less toil to pull out that old word that we used to use a lot, but still that's what we're in the business of, right? It's reducing that needless toil. So I think it's super exciting.
Yeah. And it's like, when you think about like that work, as the ops engineer, like that really, it seems like so much of what we do is just like scattering snowflakes. We're like, ooh, some little Terraform over here. Like it's hard. I feel like, at least I felt this way when I was doing this like day in, day out. It felt hard to ever feel like I actually had a work product. My entire job was like making sure that developers' lives were easy. And it's like, that was my job. That's great. But there wasn't a work product that came out of it. It was tasks, right? And like now, what our customers see is like, dude, like the person that knows Postgres, like, or the team that's working on the Postgres modular integration for Massdriver, like that team like sees that integration as like real software work. Like it's a piece of software. It's fully usable by a layman to do a complicated thing, right? Where a lot of our work is, we'll do it for the layman, or we'll tell the layman they did it wrong. They put the wrong thing. We have this contract for reserved instances. I can't believe you used the burstable micros, right? Like, and it's like, they don't know, right? And it's just like everything we do in software, we're trying to make it where people that have no idea how our business domain works can do this thing easily. And then when it gets to the cloud, we're just like, oh, you have a keyboard? You should know everything I know. And it's just like, that's not a reasonable or scalable way to go about like managing the cloud.
I love you all have said so many good things just back and forth here. But like one thing that just popped into my head anyway. So like you, Cory, you could have the best ideas in the world and you might be 100% right. And you go and you build a startup, and like once you build a startup and you're going like in a certain direction, like one doesn't just pivot and go a different way and build a different product after they, have done a round of funding and they've put all their investment into like going another way. It's really hard to sort of pivot and change the direction of a startup. And so like getting feedback and having advisors and so forth is really, really important. And one thing I noticed on your website is that Massdriver has a few advisors, including none other than the legend himself, Kelsey Hightower, and the incredible Charity Majors from Honeycomb, which is pretty awesome. So do you have any like incredible, just outstanding stories or just thoughts on why is this advisory experience so important? Like, why would a startup, especially like earlier on, want to have some heavy hitting advisors that have been in the landscape for so long, like early in this product's life cycle?
Yeah, I'd say first, before I hop into the value that you get back from really good advisors, I think is unmatched. You have to be very good about weighing that advice. It's one of the things really hard about startup is you start getting so much advice from so many people with so many different interests and so many different like experiences in the space. It's overwhelming to deal with it. And we've got some great VCs. I'll tell you what, we got a couple of crappy ones. I'll let you guys figure out amongst you who that is. But what we didn't have strong technical direction from advisors and like people that had a sense of like, what is the industry at large like feeling? And so what we didn't want to do is we didn't want to end up in an echo chamber talking about our problems. People are like, oh, that sounds cool, right? I mean, I've got friends that are on our cap table that I'll talk to them about something we're doing. Like, oh yeah, you should do that. And it's just like, they just think it's cool. They don't think, hey, of all the businesses I see, like, is this something that resonates and would work for people? And so when I was thinking of our technical advisors, I was like, okay, who do I respect in the field, and who understands like the pains of organizations more than anybody else? And so a handful of people came to mind. Kelsey and Charity were pretty much my number one and number two. Here's the wild thing: if you're working on a startup and you're thinking about emailing somebody that's not a celebrity, like real celebrity, they're just people and they'll respond to your emails. So Kelsey, I literally just tweeted at him. I'm like, yo, got a side thing. Curious if you'd be interested in like being an advisor. And he emailed me back and was like, this sounds super cool. And I was like, neat. And then I emailed Charity, almost the exact same thing. And so they just respond. I had Mitchell Hashimoto, founder of HashiCorp and Terraform, came on my podcast, literally just a cold email. So cold email people, like they still apparently check their emails every once in a while. But the advice that you can get from them is pretty unparalleled. And right, like they're not coming to give you a solution based off of what they're most interested in. They're literally like reflecting on, like Charity's reflecting on the thousands of customers that they have, right? It's like, oh, what have I heard? What have I seen my huge team deal with? Same thing for Kelsey. He's working all these different conferences doing talks. He works with so many startups and established businesses. It's like he has just this wide net where he can hear what we're doing and kind of look to that and say, like, this is a real problem real companies are having today. Like, would this work for them? And, you know, some of the advice that we've gotten from them is like, you know, some of it's trivial, but when you're in the weeds, having somebody give you trivial advice, like when you're just like deep down in it, you're like, why did I not just think of like the most basic thing in the world? Like Massdriver originally was particularly write heavy, right? So like it was all about managing your infrastructure. And Kelsey one day said, I think one of the things you guys are missing most is the rest of the org's ability to understand what's going on and like understand like what's going on in their, not just like what people have deployed, but like what's going on in their infrastructure. Like you will pay way more for knowledge than for doing, was what he said. Like people want to be able to understand what's going on in their environment. So we started adding functionality like our cost stuff. So like our cost comes back at the Terraform module level and we project it across environments, projects, your entire org, and then the actual infrastructure as code itself. So you get this like kind of 4-way cube of data for your costs. And we started bringing in things like alerts and audit logs. And so all these things that they don't necessarily like solve your problem day to day, but they solve somebody's day 2 problem tomorrow that is probably a very big stakeholder in this project, right? And so now when a CISO is looking at Massdriver and they're like, oh my gosh, we're going to bring in this tool that can manage anything in our cloud. Like I get that that's going to make the developers' lives better. How does that make the security team's lives better? And then they see things like, oh, you can see the alerts, the costs, the audit log, who's changed what, like all from like that resource. I can be like, who made this database? And I see the entire lineage of its change history and who did it right there. And now they're looking at it and they're not using Massdriver in the sense of like deploying infrastructure. Usually they're saying, hey, I got to go in here for auditing. This thing is making my job way easier because I'm like, hey, who's touched or changed the production database in these past 3 months? You literally have every single change record in one place, where if without Massdriver, you're going through some old CloudTrail stuff, like trying to piece it together. You're looking at PRs across 3 different repos. And a Massdriver is like, I can look at it and say, okay, well, what's changed in the past 3 months? Select 3 months ago, select today, if, and it shows me the difference of the changes. So it's not only who did it, when, what, how, but literally what the code change was by looking at a diagram, which I have full context of the world. So like those one of the things is just so funny. It's like focus on the read for a minute. Like you guys do such a good job of like managing this stuff for people, but how can you get the rest of the org to see value in it without being afraid of like how it's going to impact their day too? So yeah, I think I think that they've both been pretty substantial in getting us to where we are. You know, one of the things Kelsey's big on is workshops and webinars. That's honestly where we've gotten most of our customers now, is workshops and webinars. Early on, we were doing emails. He's like, you guys got to start doing some workshops around stuff that's hard to do. Show people how to do that, but like finish it with Massdriver. And so when we first
start telling the story, right?
Yeah.
And that's really his special sauce, is that ability to take all this technology and build a story around it.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah. What awesome advice there. That's great. If I make a short form video for this episode, it's going to have that in it for sure.
Yeah.
One thing too.
I think
like
I get the one time he did look at something we built and he did say, no one's going to use that. That was also great advice because he was completely right about the thing that we built. And I was like, man,
to the point.
Yeah, I was like, dude, I wish you were on the GitHub issue when we opened it. Now that we spent a month working on that feature. Oh, he's funny.
So how do you all choose the I guess tool more or less, or vendor? I don't know how, but like, you know, you integrate with like Open Tofu and stuff. I think Helm and Sneak and like probably lots of integrations. But how do you prioritize that? Is it customer demand, I guess?
It is the hardest part of our job, is that part. And it is because we never make a choice. So Massdriver is 100% agnostic about your infrastructure as code tooling, your compliance tooling, and even the clouds that it supports. So like we tell people this all the time on sales calls. We're like, everything's customizable, but what the colors are. And I wish it was, because I hate the purple. There's a purple in the site that drives me nuts. Sorry, front end team, if you hear this, I am complaining about it again. It's the only color that really looks good, but it's a terrible color. So yeah, so all, as I mentioned this a couple of times, like our approach is we have to think about every decision we're making from this ops person. At the end of the day, the ops, DevOps, platform, SRE, whatever you've decided to call this genre of engineer in your org, they're all doing the same thing. They all have different titles. They have to trust the product. And so we do this in our pricing. And one of the things that we were dead set on was like our extension model cannot require them to learn a new tool set. So our extension model is Docker files, OCI, and infrastructure as code. And now when it comes to infrastructure as code, if you're like, hey, Massdriver, you guys don't support my infrastructure as code tool, guess how you add support to Massdriver? You just push a Docker image up with whatever your IAC tool is, and Massdriver supports it. So even like our cloud onboarding is customizable. You can say, hey, you know what? My team only works on Azure and AWS, only ever show them these two things. And even like all the forms and documentation on it, customizable. And so we really just focus on like, there's essentially like 3 cornerstone pieces of technology that are all open source. They're all in the ops space. And we focus on those, and we're a framework for orchestrating all that stuff. And so if you show up with IAC and you're like, hey, we use Pulumi, there's not an official Massdriver Pulumi integration, how to add Pulumi support. And it's just like, okay, just take the Pulumi image and whatever compliance tool you're using, just push it into your registry, put that Docker tag in there, and that's what it's going to use now. So that's really been it. Now, how do we pick the ones that we originally had? Everything was originally Terraform, and then that fork happened. The license change happened, and then we helped with the fork. So that's how we got OpenTofu. Helm was something we supported very early on, just because we run Massdriver on Massdriver, which is the hardest job. There's dogfooding. There's dogfooding your CRM tool. Like, we'll use our own tool to call people. It's very hard for the thing that is running on infrastructure to provision its own infrastructure and deploy itself. There's a lot of forward and backward compatibility you have to think about at all points in time. But we're deploying on Kubernetes, so we needed Helm. So a lot of the features and functionality in Massdriver, customers will stumble across like a thing that they need, but we stumbled across it as well because we were 100% run Massdriver on Massdriver. Even in our self-hosted, you can import your install of Massdriver into itself, and our customers can actually manage Massdriver through Massdriver on their on-prem, which is mind-blowing to them. But so that was awesome. It. And so then we kind of pinned a deal with Microsoft, a program they have called Microsoft for Startups. And so we're the official infrastructure provider for a lot of the startups that go through Microsoft and Azure. And so we started just coming across these customers like, we're trying to decide between Terraform and Bicep for managing our infrastructure as code. So we put together just like a little demo of Bicep, and then the platform kind of supported it from there. And so, it's pretty easy to add stuff to it now. What's really funny is like we've reached like a stabilization point where people like don't bring up other technology now, which is cool for us because we're like, just throw it in there. But it also is one of those things where it's just like, nobody's mentioning that company to us, which is exciting. Or it is interesting, right? So like Pulumi, for example, and what's the other one? There's a really good one for Kubernetes. It was Crossplane. And it's just like, we don't have support out of the box for either of them because like literally nobody's ever asked for it. And so there's one of those things that's interesting is like we start to get these metrics of like the different tools that people are using, but then seeing the ones that people don't ask for, I'm like, I'm curious, like what's going on there? Because like I see both of those tools and I'm like, those are both good for very, very different teams. I'm surprised that people haven't brought them up. And the thing that's cool with Massdriver is we work across all the tools. So you can actually put like, a cloud formation stack, standing something up and then Pulumi modifying it, or, have them work together or pass data in between them. So, but yeah, that's how we got to the ones that we support today.
I love that. And like you made a really good point. I don't remember where I was. I was either in Dallas or San Jose, but I was talking to a VC and I was just asking questions. It's someone that had invested in a lot of successful startups and such. And I forget how I framed the question, but it was something to the effect of like, okay, what is been the big difference between the ones that keep succeeding and the ones that don't? And his answer was literally, I'll never forget it. He was like, the difference is in the ones that eat their own dog food and the ones that do not. And I was like, wow, that's that's intense. And he was like, well, if you're not using your product day in and day out, and you're expecting all your customers to find the issues, or you don't know how hard it is. Maybe it's really hard to use and you don't even know because you're not using it. So I thought that was really, it says a lot.
Yeah, we do. I mean, it was funny. Like every time we sit down to do something, we're like, can we easily do this with Massdriver? Like in a day, can we add the functionality, or do we got to go look at another tool? And now for us, looking at another tool is always expensive, because now like self-hosted is our most popular install model. That means whoever installs Massdriver also has to have this other thing. So now we start looking at dependencies, like with like a real like, do we actually want to bring that thing in or not, right? And so,
did you say that self-hosted is your most popular?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a dramatic. I wouldn't.
Well, that speaks to the power of the pivot as well, right? It you always start a thing and you have this picture in your mind of what it's going to be, and then over time it moves and shifts and changes as you engage with customers in the real world. And I think you've done a good job kind of explaining how you guys have gone through that process, and you've made those evolutionary steps, according to customer demand, which is fabulous.
What's really funny about pivoting is like we've actually, we had that one big like financial downturn, like paired with like our GTM just going to shit. And that was a moment for us where we really had to consider like pivoting. And one of the things that's funny is like we look back on like, we're like, what have people been asking us for that we've been telling people no? Right? Because like one of the other things you learn is like you got to tell people no, because you got to focus on like what you do and what you do good. And so that's where it was like, oh, like we should probably let people put their own infrastructure as code in this thing, right? And like that saved us from our first pivot. We've considered pivots at other point in times, but the thing that's really funny is like me and my co-founder were both operations engineers, and so we've toyed with the idea of like a hard pivot, like out of the space. I think that's kind of that's in the rearview mirror now. But it was so funny because like the thing that we'd always immediately run into was we were like, how are we going to manage our infrastructure as code? And we were just mad again because it was just like, nothing has been easier than like the way that we do it today.
We still have to solve this problem. Yeah.
Yeah, we still have to solve the problem. So it's like we were looking at it, we're like, we either keep running Massdriver to like run like our pivot, and then it's like, we're managing 2Go bases, or we go back to like, here's 7,000 lines of YAML to deploy this Terraform. Do we want to use a monolith or a monorepo or a Teralith? And like, now we're back into making all these painful decisions that most of our customers are making every day. And so it's funny. It's like we had these 2 or 3 moments where we thought about something else and we're like, this still really sucks. Maybe we got to go like listen to people more and like not our gut as much. And so, it turns out listen to people, but don't listen too much because they'll also ask you to build crazy stuff. So it's like, that's the hard part though. It's just like the advice comes in from customers, from VCs, from smart people on your board. And you have to figure out all these people that don't want to be wrong, which one of them is right.
Yeah. They can't all be wrong, but most of the time they can't all be right.
Yep.
Right? Yep.
This is true. This has been fascinating. You know, what's really funny is I've been like, I think I've told you this a few times, Yvonne, like, oh, we should make our episodes shorter. Like I've even thought about like 30 minutes or less, and this definitely wasn't the episode to do that with.
No.
Because there's been so much good stuff in here, but we're coming up on an hour. So an hour I definitely think is a hard stop. But I just wanted to open it up. First of all, do you have any other things top of mind, Yvonne, that you want to ask?
No, I think this has been fabulous.
And I just want to open the floor to you, Cory. What would you instill to our listeners? It could be anything. It could be about the market, about automation in general, about Massdriver, anything, advice, whatever.
I'm going to give you, I'm going to not sell Massdriver because I'm also an ops person. And I realize y'all are listening to this because you want to learn some nerd stuff and not be sold to. So I will tell you the closest thing I can do to selling Massdriver while also making your life easier. And that is, y'all got to lean into abstractions. Like you just got to do it. Like we had this moment in infrastructure as code a few years back where like everybody leaned into abstractions and it kind of blew up in people's faces. You look at the cloud, you look at AWS, you pick any one of the services from AWS and go look at the docs. Don't look at Terraform, go look at the actual REST docs. And I want you as an ops person to look at every single attribute for creating a database, or let's do the simple thing. Let's create an S3 bucket. That's a simple thing, right? It's just a bucket. You just put some stuff in it that you need to put in there. It's just a bucket. with the most amount of parameters of any API endpoint on AWS, 120 something variables that go into that HTTP request to make a bucket. Look through that list and ask yourself, truly, if you're looking at your engineering org, how many of your engineers would have even the briefest clue of what to put in for that value? How many of them would 100% know what to put in for that value? And that is your first baby step for abstractions, because everything in the cloud, every single cloud's API is a mix of developer concerns and operations concerns. And this is not the DevOps that we want. We didn't want our DevOps in an HTTP request. We wanted these teams to work better together, not do each other's jobs, not be a single API endpoint. But the way that we work with the cloud, half dev, half ops. So if I turn to my developers and I say, you all are writing Terraform, I have two options. I'm writing Terraform, or you're writing Terraform, or we're both writing Terraform. I'll tell you what, if you say, if you want something from the cloud, you write some Terraform, every single one of you that made that decision has just made the next day of your life so much harder. And anybody who says, we're going to ops teams writing the Terraform for everybody, that's fantastic when you're a team of 8. But as soon as you're not, that decision has just made every single day of the rest of your life very, 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 very much harder. To get to this idea of DevOps, which predates the modern cloud, right? The term DevOps was coined when we ran workloads on the cloud, not when our apps called the cloud, right? Now we have queues and buckets and databases and ETL pipelines. When we coined the term DevOps, there was the ops layer that devs sat on. The cloud is not something you sit on. It is something you sit on and interact with, and that's how their APIs look. So when we're designing Terraform, Bicep, OpenTofu, whatever you're developing, you want it to be something that you understand, that is your domain of expertise, and it is easy for somebody else who does not know this to get what they want from it. If I want an S3 bucket, you have to make it easy enough for me to get an S3 bucket without me having to ask you what to put in, without me having to ask you how to do this or do that. So I wrote a blog post a few weeks back called The Case for Abstractions. So check it out. And I think one of the things that's going to be hardest for most people that read this is they're going to say, we have really good abstractions. We've already done this. We use the Terraform public modules. Terraform public modules have taken an absolute ungodly amount of work to put together. And the people that have put them together, they're doing the work that they're doing. They're useless. There's no abstraction there. They're anemic. Every single parameter of the cloud is exposed on those things. And so when you hand the EKS module to developers, you have not made that easy for them to deploy EKS. If you grab the S3, are you saying, no, developers aren't deploying EKS, Cory? Go grab the S3 official Terraform public module and hand that to any one of your developers and tell them to come back with 10 fields that they 100% know the answer to. They will not. Right. And so we have to approach like the way that we think about infrastructure as code as a software asset. The person on the other side of this does not know how to run this in the cloud, but they need to use it. So think about it that way. And one of the things I point out in the article is you're already doing this. You're doing it in Slack, though. You make a module, you publish it, a developer finds it, and they Slack. Chauncey and whoever else, the name I made up earlier, you're doing it. You already have expertise in your head. The developer looks at a Terraform module and goes, I don't know what instance type to put in. So they Slack you and they say, hey, I'm making a database. I don't know what to put in this instance type field. How many zones should I pick? You as the ops person are now thinking through that answer. And you're probably coming to a conclusion as to why this instance type or another. So why not build that logic and the question that your developer asks you into your Terraform module? Make the variables about what the developer understands. It's not instance type. If it's a database, it is, what is your projected data growth month over month? What's your starting value? How much query RAM do you need? Things that they know. Use the logic in your IAC to map that back to an instance type. Take all their input, the same stuff that they're asking you via Slack where you're calculating it in your head, and just write a function in your Terraform that does it. And that is just the smallest baby step where now developers are seeing it and they're not seeing a bunch of questions about operations stuff. They're seeing, here's questions about your workload that you know, punch it in and I'll give you the right config. The thing that's going to happen to you on day 2 is 2 months from now, somebody's going to say, why is the database using an R6G extra large? And you're going to be able to go and look at the variables, and you're going to be able to see the answers to the questions the developers gave you, and you're going to exactly know why it's using that instance type. Otherwise, you're going to say, hey, Chauncey, who did you Slack to ask why to use this instance type? I need to ping them and ask them why we're using this instance type, which is just more work for you. So check out that article. If it vibes with you, then check out Massdriver. If you check out that article and you don't like that article, you're going to hate what I've built.
I will link them in the show notes. And hey, where else can folks find? So I got to say, I did look at your Twitter bio. It was funny. It was like, I'm here to watch the world burn, but my real stuff is like on LinkedIn and Reddit.
Yeah,
you're actually active on Twitter, and there was like something about a printer on there. It was like funny.
Oh,
but yeah. Where can folks find you?
I have decided.
You just
I
look
have
like
decided.
That kind of person.
It's Twitter until they get rid of the .com. So it's just Twitter. I'm sorry. I go to twitter.com. It works.
Yeah.
But I would say LinkedIn, Reddit. I'm Cory apostrophe on Reddit. But I will say LinkedIn is the only place. I'm gonna say I don't take social media seriously whatsoever. I don't really like it. But so LinkedIn is where you're gonna see me talking about the most tech stuff. Reddit, you're gonna see me tech stuff and my hobbies, which may or may not be exciting to you. If you're into RC cars, check it out. Twitter is. I'm really just there to watch the world burn. I love seeing this entire thing fall apart, and I will not sign off until they change twitter.com so I can't log in anymore because I refuse to type in X because it's silly, or until Elon Musk is crying that he lost $40 billion. I'll leave then. And in the meantime, I'm just trying to sow chaos like everybody else.
I do got to say that one thing that I love from a value perspective on Twitter is the sports updates are so fast. So like when I have like the Stanley Cup playoffs, the updates that are coming from folks in my feed, there's like not anything better that I can find out there. It's like great for following sports updates. It's incredible.
It's also great for the Elixir community is still, like if I have an Elixir question, it gets answered so fast there versus like Reddit. It'll just kind of like sit there for a while and somebody will tell me I'm dumb. But on Twitter, everybody's nice about it still. Just in the Elixir community, I don't think they're nice outside of that community. Everybody's mean to each other.
Micro communities.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Good luck surviving through the heat. And until next time.